established Muslim association over here. And then, of course, you have probably heard from me about formation of clans, and basically two of us, we helped establish clans. And then, of course, we did the long later on. So that was the thing, the Muslim thing. At the time, I mean, you might have a laugh around it. The purpose of establishing those groups, associations, how can we keep ourselves Muslim? It wasn't about the tabligh, it wasn't about this big thing. It was about, can we keep ourselves Muslim? And that was a big struggle, because when you are all day long, you are interacting with other people, there's no Muslim people around you. You have a problem of, place to pray, you got a problem of halal meat, you got all sorts of issues. And we saw, and as we heard, we knew the problems, particularly in Australia, with the old camel drivers, Afghan camel driver for people from the frontier, who were brought there by the Europeans, by British, to drive camels. All these people over there were hundreds who were brought there, and they got lost. They had named Khans. They were not Muslims, because they were brought single men. And so we had a whole lot of that history, and there were books written about that. So the whole idea was to look, can we establish some organizations and groups so people can meet each other? And honestly, Hanif Qazi's name I found from directory. Those days, the telephone directory that we used to have. And honestly, I used to, when I came, because I didn't know anybody. I looked up names, look at the directory, and I would look Muhammad, Ahmed, Hussein, these kind of names. When I find somebody, a Muslim. And this is how I've discovered some of these people. Khalid Sandhu's name I discovered from the directory. And I called him. And he was so excited. Come straight away, and to meet him. Well, this was the sort of thinking at the time. And similarly, I found his contact, and it so happened that the group from here, the technology group here, who want to go for a trip, they had students, international students, and I said to them, well, why don't you guys, I knew David lecturer at the time, Murray, what was his name? Murray was the head of it. Anyway, so I said, why didn't you guys Murray. Yeah. So I said to him, why don't you take me with you too? I go with you. We have a trip. And so this is how we end up there. And then I called him out of the blue and told him, look, I'm coming to the group. And, Hanif being Hanif, he said, why don't you bring everybody around to have lunch? Anyway, but those were the days you were looking forward to have somebody that you can identify, either a Pakistani or even a Muslim, doesn't matter whether they were from Fiji or whatever they were, but they were far between, very few. So struggle was, keep our identity, keep our religion, and that was, a big thing. That itself was, because I saw some myself, some Indians totally got lost, here. And a lot of them actually got married. So there used to be a few Gujarati people here, in Wellington especially, in Auckland, and their children lost because they married some Europeans, Maori, this and that. There was a family, a Maori family in Rotorua. Yeah, Rotorua. Yeah, there was a very famous a lady. Her name was Khan, a Maori lady, mixed. She was married to Pakistani. Her name Millie Khan. Her name was Millie. She was top champion of bowling. The bowling, and she was half Pakistani. So somebody came there and died. I spoke to him, and so this was his story. So we had to start from there. So then, soon, a few years after my arrival, I thought, well, science, of course, is my passion. We're learning in science and continue. machinery, agriculture machinery development. But, you know, I said to myself, look, that's time when I pretty much decided we're gonna stay here. We're not gonna go. Initially wanted to, my main ambition was to become a vice chancellor of agriculture university sometime. Yeah, that was my ambition. But that never happened. And then we realized that we're not gonna. Children came along, and we start putting our feet down on the ground. And once your feet on the ground, you get stuck. It's like getting stuck in the mud. You knew it, you know. And that's when I started changing the attitude to life. And I said, all right, let's do something wider than just the Muslim community. Yeah, of course, we established Qiyam, established the halal meat and all that. We had a couple of trips, and Ali came with me to the Middle East to help establish. That's a story itself. I probably never heard from you. We established that. I went around to, you know, visit all 45 freezing works, slaughter plants, where visited, you know, turned them into halal slaughter. Went to Fiji twice to recruit slaughtermen. We had some people from Malaysia, and of course, the Iranian had started before, and then we started it. And alhamdulillah, that's, you know, most of the meat in New Zealand is now halal.
About 250 other settlement jobs.
Yeah.
Only from
So we created that, you know, those jobs. That was the one logic to, you know, when I dealt with the Arabs, was, you know, that you will help us employ our people, you will help us to establish Islamic centers, and those kind of things. We convince them, basically, look, if you do this, you not only do the Islamic duty, but also you do help in that community. Alhamdulillah, you know, those 2 trips, I brought quite a bit of money, and the first Islamic center in Hamilton, and Palmerston North, and in Wellington was built or bought with that money that I brought. Right. And then, of course, they built a mosque in Christchurch with the help of the Saudi fella, who's a student, and Hanif Ghazi and Mansoor Khwaja. They built a mosque over there. At that time, was the most southern mosque, you know. And where there was a problem, we heard about it.
सर इधर एक बात मैं कहूँगा, यहाँ सारे बैठे हैं जो हम मैसी में मस्जिद में
मैं बताता हूँ. So anyway, so those was the thing. That by that time, I had decided to look. Just the passion for what you do is not enough for your life. You got to do community service. You got to do more for our community while you know, having bread and butter, you know, as a lecturer, you know, that's just not enough. You have to do other things, because when you decide we're going to stay here, our children are going to be here, grandchildren are going to be here. And I used to say to, and even Harif mentioned about going there. Now we talk about that. Actually, we have become unfit for Pakistan. And I went to Pakistan too, at the same time that he did. Well, he went earlier, but then we joined PRC together in '89. And that's where the student project started. Mainly, I did bring other students beforehand, but then that, and I'll tell you in a minute about that. '89. So I went there for 2 years, but I left there a year and a half, and abused a few people there and took off and came back. And so that was the thing. And I said, you know, I've done my bit for you, and you know, help you. Of course, later on, then I went back again and promoted the technology that I had developed, and mashallah, it's as successful as working. All right. And anyway, so this is the whole thing about there, but for me, that wasn't enough. You know, just doing the, you know, the Muslim thing, and then I moved on into more ethnic, right? In the 90s, and then of course became the chairman of the national level, the Federation of the Ethnic Council of New Zealand. And the idea was that I wanted all our communities, ethnic community, because you see there was a lot of discrimination. You know, you kind of think about what we went through. I was like Karimancha, Indians, all of us, nobody knew about Pakistan, but we were all Indians, and we were Karimanchas. They used to call us Karimanchas. And so went through all that, and somebody mentioned the housing, and I had to buy. If our people came along and you had a child or two, you wouldn't find a house here in this town. You couldn't find a house. So you call with accent, the landlord would say, "Sorry, the house is gone." So you just barely your accent. But that's discrimination. It was subtle. Sometimes it's open, other times it's subtle. And then, would you believe it? In Savage Crescent, you have heard about that. Savage Crescent was the first public government built in 1935. The first Labour government came in and they built social housing, we call today. Those days we used to call it state housing. They built that place. Anyway, so I had to buy 2 houses there. One for Afzal, who came, one of my former students who came earlier. So he came back as a resident and couldn't find a house. He had 3 children. Nobody would give him a place. I bought a house for him. I said, "Look, you stay." And then my student, Dr. Manzoor from your boss, he was friends. He came and did a PhD with us, and he brought 3 children too. And again, couldn't find a place. So I bought another house, purely, simply to provide accommodation for them. They were cheap houses those days, $20,000. And Savage Crescent being an old place. Anyway, so we went through those kind of situations, and I used to feel this discrimination. I don't know about many people, but I used to feel felt hurt that this is happening here, and that was the reason I had to turn around the social issues and then later on turn to politics. Because for me, the future was for my children and my grandchildren. I wanted them to grow up as full citizens and contribute at higher level, which the Maoris call it, being on the top table. That's when I said, look, we got to be in the decision making. Unless you're in the decision maker, you're not going to make a difference. Okay? So I started with the Ethnic Council of New Zealand. I established a local ethnic council here. First we established Islamic Association, number 2, and I established that one, and then we became the national chair. Alongside working, the idea was, let's organize all the ethnic communities of New Zealand. We were at that time about 5-6%. Now, of course, alhamdulillah, that's 16%. The Asian people, the African, and all that. And so the idea was, let them, be part of this thing. And then, of course, came the opportunity. Is always step up to, we changed the system of voting system to MMP. It's called a mixed members proportional system, where half of the Parliament of New Zealand is elected directly from the electorate areas, and other 50% are on the list. Just like your women's seats in Pakistan, we do that some proportions. So this is a system which is followed in Germany. So with MMP system, before that, to get elected for people like me or anybody ethnic was impossible. Because the European would not vote for us. And there's still, most places they still don't vote for us. Okay? So with this system, you were able to, every party was able to make their list of the party candidates, and they will get the number of seats according to the proportion of percentage of vote they will get on the, there are 2 votes, one for their local area candidate and the other one is for the party. Okay? So if you become higher up enough on the party vote, total party vote, let's say you get 50%, then you get 60 seats. in the parliament, right? So in the priority list of the list every party has, the top 60 will become okay, on that proportion. So that was a system that I thought, along with others, that we should have that system. So all ethnicities, people of all, they can become have an opportunity to do this. So that's where the opportunity came for me. Not as that I really wasn't sure that I wanted to be in the parliament, but that system came in, and it so happened that we got known, and of course the other thing I did on the side was pretty much the time I arrived in pharmacy law, with my background in farming and the village life and all that, I became part of the Labour Party. Almost 40 years ago, I became part of it, and helped the local MPs and whenever we did, because I thought that was important to be part of that and networking. And anyway, so much so, 99, then Helen Clark was the Prime Minister. Became Prime Minister, but before that, she pretty much, one time she came to Pharmacy North and, he said, well, I would like to see you in Melbourne. Because she had known me, I had known her through the Ethnic Council, which was, all over the country. So basically she said, اشرف, you do all this work that an MP does, voluntarily, why don't you formally do it? This is how it came about. So I stood in 99 on the list. On election night, I missed by one, but when the special came, and I missed by 5 because the Green Party had won their seat, and then they got 5 seats, and we were at anyway. So 2002, I then tried again. I became chamber, and I got it written as the basic purpose was that I wanted to open doors for our children and grandchildren, future of the ethnic community, because we had no say. So I wanted that opened up, and so I became an MP, and of course that's where you think, as Hanif said, you're doing things which that our people do a lot of religious things, the Tablighi people do things, but my way was different way of spreading Islam and doing things. One of those things was to talk at the top, top table where people actually get to know you, who you are, and want to hear your voices. And so this is how I started. So I had 9 years, and first I had 26 years at Messi. I did all the teaching. It was a great, love, if you like, teaching the students, particularly, teaching the European kids, and I enjoyed it. And back in the mind was also, you bastard, you did so much to us, 200 years, and that's my time. So, that was great fun. And so we did that, did the politics, and then, we decided, okay, well, it's enough. In New Zealand, you don't stay for too long. You do your bit and move on. So one of the beauties, because you got opportunities, you got jobs. So it's not like Pakistan or India where people just stay forever. You have to die, thrown out and killed. And so here people move on. And of course, by the way, I had one term of MP here, and then Helen said, what the hell are you doing over there? There are people in Auckland. Why don't you go to Auckland? This is basically, I didn't want to go because I loved it here. I lived up the hill, in one house I built for 30 years, 25 years I lived in that house. And that's where our kids born and grew up. And all these boys, they gave me a place. But then I had to go there, Auckland, and then I had 2 terms in Auckland. And then basically then came back and in the parliament, and then I'm now, the last 2 terms, like a little guy here, of course, I've been pushing him a little bit to do these things. And so I became the local, what we call a local council board member, which is equivalent to a local, it's actually similar to your council here, same side exactly, but we call them in Auckland, we have a mayor, then we have councillors. Auckland City is a big city, very close to 2 million people, but geographically it's very big, and more than 100 kilometers long, 60 kilometer wide. So their system is a 3-tier system. So you have mayor, then you have 20 councillor, and then you have 20 local boards, we call them. All right? And each area, each local board is same size as council. So then we have 7 members, and 7 or 8 members depending on the population in each board. And so I'm the deputy chair of the local board now. And then last term I also got elected to the DHB, District Health Board. You have a governing board. So this is what I call a retirement. I want to do full time. And so that was one of the things, and the whole idea of that change, the time was open the doors, And now, alhamdulillah, there are now 5 or 6 ethnic MPs, different ones, and that's great to see Asian people and all that. And the first time we have an African person, and so we are lining up. Hopefully, one of the persons sitting here too. Hopefully, can get into those in one day. Because the thing is, and I'm going to say to you, those who are here, for some of you probably have to go back. Those I can tell you today, you're never going to go in. This is such a beautiful place, a lovely country, with all its faults and small and all that. But now I've been to 130 countries in my life, a lot. Before, by the way, before I was coming in. To many countries I've been there 30, 40 times. So a lot of travel. This is the best country. So peaceful place, and great place to have your children and grandchildren. So that's why I often, this is my advice to is start thinking about start planning ahead. The children, grandchildren are here to start becoming a managerial, decision-making levels rather than just working. So you have all the qualifications. You are actually the best brain. And I've noticed that we contribute so much overseas. People from subcontinent are really top brain. And I have no shame. I tell my Pakistan friends, you bastard, we are better than you. Because I have, alhamdulillah, so many confidence now. I speak straight up. I tell them, look, you guys can't compete with us. I did that here when I used to go through promotions. They used a lot of my colleagues, Pakistan friends would get angry with me. So how come you got a head up? You got a promotion. All days with, and I had to struggle. You really know that. Set up a committee here, because for years I noticed there was no our Asian people, ethnic people, there was no professor. And I wouldn't get promoted. And then I said to the vice chancellor at the time, I said, look, this is not good enough. Because I became quite active in the ethnic council. This is not good enough. We need to look at that ways how we can get all these people, And then there was one lady who was deputy vice chancellor, and that's when the Islamic Center. I said, well, this is not good enough. That all these people done so much good, published so much, how come they don't get promotions? I didn't see any associate professor or professor, lecturer professor. And that's when I actually established a committee. There's a Maori guy who was leading it, a Professor Mason Dewey. I think he retired now. And so 3-4 of us, how to get these people promoted and bring them up. I think now you've got quite a few, professorial level people. But this is it. Those are the things you have to struggle, Because once you decide, okay, this is your place, you're going to stay here, and then you start contributing. Then you're not a worker, you become leader. You have to lead. And the leadership only going to come if you start interacting with higher level. that's where, by the way, the Islamic Center came in. So I went to the Vashas. And I said, this is, which year was it? 87, I think?
Yeah, yeah.
87?
I had left by that time.
But you were not here. You were not here. Anyway, so I went to the Vasha and I said, look, and we used to pray in bloody cupboards. I used to call it cupboards, you know, some small room place where we go around and hide and do the Jummah prayer, something, of course. You know, we hired a room somewhere, or a lecture room. But this was all, if you like, English or so I said to her, look, this is not good enough. So I used, hikmah. I said, look, we used to get a lot of Malaysian students and a lot of Indonesian students. And there were a few people from, occasionally a few Pakistanis or Indians. And so there were a few Middle Eastern, but majority was Malaysian students, funded by the government, sprinkling of other students. But there was no place. So I said to her, why don't you, because that's the time when, there was a lot of push for international education. The university then did good money there. Then they started international student fee. And so I said to her, well, look, why don't you use, I said, look, why do we market it as a place where there's an Islamic center or mosque for students who, from Malaysia and other places, you go over there now and market it. They come here, they keep asking where the mosque, where we're going to go pray and all that. I said, look, Muslims need to at least during work hours, at least 2 or 3 prayers. You do Zohar prayer, afternoon prayer, then sometimes students are here, Maghrib prayer, they can do that too. And she, a woman,